Am I ready? Am I gonna keep that in? I sure hope not. Hello there, friend. Welcome back to Max Answers Writing Advice Questions, NaNoWriMo edition. Or National Novel Writing Month. You've been sending in your questions, I've tossed them into this randomized table, and it's time once again to answer some more questions. But of course, before I advance, allow me to remind you as well that you can leave your questions in the comments down below, and I will add them to the pool. There has been a slight change of plan. I was thinking of doing a giant answer-a-thon by the end of the month, but I've gotten so many that I may just keep doing these videos into November. I'll have to wait and see how people react to that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and we'll adapt and move as the month goes on. For the time being, allow me to remind you, as always, that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, instead take it as the ramblings of a silly person who looks precisely like this. I always wait until I'm editing to see exactly how silly I looked, so we'll have to wait until Max from the future edits out this scene, if they decide to edit it out. And the first question of the day is gonna be... Question 16, that's a little higher. Not really. Question 16. Oh wow, this is actually a really straightforward question. Have you ever used Scrivener? What are your thoughts on it? Now, I nearly forgot to mention I am going to have a soft timer on these questions to make sure that I don't ramble for far too long. I am known to do that. It is part of my ability to ramble, so I will make sure to not ramble too much. Max said, rambling. Anyhow, let's put the timer right on and let's talk Scrivener. I have a very particular history with Scrivener. Scrivener, if you don't know, it's a program. I forget the developers, they're really nice people. I like their other program they made called Scapple, I'll talk about it in a moment. This program always comes up, people always mention it, because it's one of those things that you get a free license to if you complete NaNoWriMo. If you complete NaNoWriMo, you get access to Scrivener. Scrivener is a novel writing program, if you may. It comes with a lot of tools, and I used it. I actually purchased it like 4 or 5 years back, and I had it on my PC, and I wasn't very happy with it for a couple of reasons. And of course, as I mentioned, this is all just my opinion. I know plenty of people, some of them who are super successful writers, who love Scrivener. I don't particularly like it. I used to like it, and then I realized it wasn't doing what I needed it to do. Scrivener is awesome, and it's super organized, and it has all of these layers of things you can do with it. And I realized myself that I was spending more time playing with those things than actually writing, which is kind of a problem when you want to finish books. So that was one strike. The second strike was that I used to be a really lazy ebook person, and I used to just generate ebooks through Scrivener because I thought they were okay. And then I realized rather quickly through feedback that that was a terrible choice. So that was another mark on Scrivener. I eventually learned how to code ebooks myself. It's actually not very hard. It's basically like coding HTML pages. Not really complicated HTML pages, just regular HTML pages. It's not very hard. I may do a video on that eventually, or I could just point you to Guido Henkel's tutorial on how to make ebooks. Take pride on ebook making. Really, really, really good article. It's like 11 parts. Amazing. That's how I learned how to make ebooks. Anyhow, the final strike for Scrivener came when my PC died about 3 years back. I had a PC. Actually, about 3.5 years ago. I had a PC, and the main hard drive suffered a complete and total failure. Total hard drive failure, absolute hard drive failure, which meant that even if I spent thousands of dollars to send it out to one of those services that can revive it for you, it's still nothing would have come from it. Everything that I had on that hard drive was gone. Permanently, ultimately, forever gone. And that included all of the things I had on Scrivener. I had backed up a lot of things, and I had moved over to Evernote. But I lost a lot, and I realized that the final mark on Scrivener was that it wasn't cloud storage. It wasn't automatically being saved all the time. Now, again, this is just my personal opinion on how I feel about things. I think Scrivener is a pretty cool program. I think the developers are pretty cool people. Scrivener just wasn't for me. Scrivener just wasn't for me. Now, if you like those developers, I recommend you pick up their other program, which I can't find on my screen anymore. It's called Scapple. Scapple is probably the best software for mind mapping because it does one thing right. And I'm gonna stop talking for a moment, but I'll explain to you. Most mind mapping software, which by the way is when you have speech bubbles connected to one another, most mind mapping software force you to start with one point and then branch out. The most awesome thing about Scapple, and by the way, I purchased this program. I was broke as hell, and I still purchased it because it's a good purchase to have. Scapple, you create these bubbles with information on them, right? And you can connect them to one another. You don't have to start with a central point. You can just connect them as you go. And that itself makes it one of the best mind mapping software out there. But yeah, anyhow, what's my experience with Scrivener? I tried it. I didn't particularly like it, but that was because of my own personal reasons. If if you think that it will work for you, give it a try. I think they have like a 30-day free trial. And if you complete NaNoWriMo, I think you get like a free license or something like that. I forget. But yeah, that's how I feel about Scrivener. Insightful question out of the way. By the way, in case you're wondering, what do I use instead of Scrivener? I use Focusrite for writing and Evernote for keeping track of my writing. Both are free programs. I recommend you try them out. I have videos on them on my channel. Just look them up. Focusrite, one word, and Evernote, one word. So let's reduce the maximum number of questions by 1 and then roll the dice again. The next question is going to be number 2. That is the lowest. That is possibly the second lowest number you could have possibly given me. Whoops. No wonder this is on 2 because this is an ancient question that I forgot to get to. Sorry, William. Is my suggestion for writing about sensitive topics still in the queue? This question, I completely forgot about it. It completely snuck through the cracks. So let's tackle it and start. Man, wouldn't it be terrible if I just answer the question flat on? Like, is my suggestion for writing about sensitive topics still in the queue? Yes, William, it is. Next question. No, that would be terrible. Writing about sensitive subjects in fiction. How? If you want to get a mental image of what I'm seeing in my mind right now, imagine like a giant ball of yarn, and I'm trying to find where it begins. Because here's the deal. There are many reasons why we worry about the people's reaction to our writing. First and foremost, the big one, censorship, the impact on our social stance, what people think of us, and many other things. Now, I've had this stance forever, and I'm gonna keep standing by it because I think it's really meaningful. And here's the deal. I think that writing and fiction is the safest place, the safest, most meaningful place through which we can explore sensitive subjects, through which we can explore the things that terrify us, that scare us, and the things that we don't know. I think it is the perfect place to explore those things, as long as we are mindful and respectful. Here's the dealio. And I think I will eventually have to talk about this because I get this question all the time. And I'm gonna connect your question to another question that I get all the time, and that is, hey Max, in my story, X and Y happened, and I'm afraid people will think that I'm racist because X and Y happened. What should I do? And first and foremost, by the virtue that before you write something like this, or when you finish writing it, you ask yourself, am I being offensive? Is there a possibility that maybe I'm offending somebody by writing this? By virtue of you having that self-awareness, I think that, I'm not going to guarantee that you're not being racist, because it's entirely likely, but that within, at least to me, it puts you in a relatively safe zone. Why? Because people who are truly sexist, racist, and ableist don't have that self-awareness because they have internalized that there's nothing wrong with, being those things. So by the fact that you have this self-awareness, I think that it puts you in a relatively safe field. Now, I know that this question, again, I can't find the start to this ball of yarn, so let's just, look around it relatively quickly. Is it wrong to write about sensitive subjects? I don't think so. I think writing and fiction is the most perfect place to explore these things. It is the most perfect place through which people can learn to understand, terrible things like war and loss and death and sorrow and grief and many other things like that. We can learn about them and explore them through writing. Not only ourselves writing it, but reading and sharing it with other people. I know you're Tron. Give me a second. Now, do I think we should write about those things? if they're meaningful to your story and if they come up, sure. I don't think that every story needs to be pushing the envelope and needs to be tackling the top hot button issues. I don't think so. But because I feel like I'm doing a balancing act on a razor blade, because people are always like, no, there shouldn't be writing about this and there shouldn't be writing about that, and I'm like, as long as it's not gratuitous, as long as it's not done for the sake of shock value, or just to be offensive, or just to be disrespectful, I think it's fine. I think writing is the perfect place to explore those things. What is the best way to go about doing it? Well, write it as it comes to you, write it truthfully, and without fear and without doubt, and then, before you share it with the world, share it with a few people and see what they think. Again, I think that any person with the self-awareness to stop and ask themselves, wait a minute, am I being disrespectful, is probably on the safe field. I think so. Why? Again, because people who have internalized that there's nothing wrong with being racist and sexist and ableist, don't actually have those questions. Why? Because they've internalized it. From their point of view, there's nothing wrong, and thus when they do things like that, they don't question it. So that's pretty much all I have to say about sensitive subjects. It is a really big question, and I may excuse me, I just became 13 again, and I may tackle it again later. So, to answer your question, William, is your question still in the queue? Yes, most likely, probably, yes. And now for the final question. I opened up the wrong web page. Let's actually adjust the number of questions, one less, of course. I am always adjusting the random number generator, by the way, because I don't want any, ghost questions to be there. Anyhow, the next question, yes, finally a high number, 32. 32. Please step up to the plate. 32. Wait a minute. I know who sent this. This is Smiley Q's question. Well, you know what? I was thinking about this question earlier today while I was having breakfast. True story. Max has breakfast. Political statements. This is one of the questions that she sent me recently. Max, how do you personally diversify your cast of characters? I am currently struggling with making my characters more representative of their places of origin. Stupid, unconscious whitewashing. Again, I'm not lying to you. When I was eating breakfast this morning, I was actually thinking about this question. Why? Because I think this is a really tough question for me to wrap my mind around. Why? Because as a person of color who was not born on the US, I actually moved to the US when I was 13. I completely understand and appreciate the concept of representation within fiction. Why? Because it's meaningful to see people of your own background and stories, because it lets you understand and not only rationalize but internalize that you too can be a part of these stories. There's something I need to say right now. Representation is super important and it's amazing. Do I think that every story needs to have a character of every background and a representation of every disability? No, that's just downright silly. Do I think that every story needs to have a rainbow of characters? No, I think that's silly. Unless it's realistic and it fits within the story. Okay, forget I said realistic, it's authentic to the story and the story that you're telling. If that is so, fine by me. I'm just gonna drop it. I hate token characters. I would rather have no representation than a character who's clearly here just to fill in the checkbox that we had a Hispanic character. I think, just like with the previous question, the fact that you're asking yourself and you're stopping to think, wait a minute, am I whitewashing this story? I think that puts you in a relatively safe place. Why? Because you're self-aware. You are aware that you have been programmed by society to portray peoples in your stories as white, because that's what's seen as normal, because movies and televisions and comic books and all these things have only shown you white people. You understand that, you're aware of it, and you're slowly deprogramming yourself. That's good, that's good. No, seriously, it's actually really good. You're doing your part and you're breaking apart those things that you don't particularly agree with anymore, and those things that society programmed into you. You're doing the right thing. Now, as to actually answer your question, because I've been rambling and I actually haven't answered your question, how do I personally diversify my cast of characters? And you're saying that you're particularly struggling with making characters more representative of their places of origin. Now, I forget who told me this, but I thought it was actually a pretty nice response. And the response was to, if there's a character from a particular background that you want to write and you're not entirely sure how you can do it, look up independent films from that particular country. And I don't know why I've never thought about that before, because it may not give you a representative, entire encompassing view of a particular country, but finding their independent films will show you, if not anything, a little bit of the tone. Because I've always found, personally, that independent films tend to be a little bit more gritty and a little bit more focused on the particular issues of that place. Again, I'm not claiming that it's gonna be representative and it's gonna, like, answer all of your questions about one particular place, but if you're looking for a tone, if you're looking for a little bit of insight as to maybe the things that you didn't know were happening in another country, consider looking up independent films from that particular place. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I hope that I answered your question, and if anything, I hope that I gave you my own particular point of view on this issue. If you have your very own point of view, please feel free to share it down in the comments down below, as well as your own questions. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do a giant answer-a-thon at the end of October, because I've gotten a lot of questions. I may just keep answering them into November. We'll have to wait and see how things go. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I'll be seeing you on the next one.